I was standing in the marble foyer of our Manhattan penthouse, staring at a catering invoice that cost more than most people's cars, when I realized my wife hadn't spoken to me in 3 days. Not unusual, really. Helena Ward-Gates had perfected the art of selective communication over our 20 years of marriage. She spoke when she needed money, wanted something moved, or required my signature on yet another investment opportunity for her interior design business. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The invoice in my hand was for our upcoming 20th anniversary celebration, a lavish affair I'd been planning for months. $50,000 for a single evening. Wagyu beef, Dom Pérignon, imported orchids, a string quartet, and enough gold leaf decorations to make King Midas jealous. All for Helena's vision of the perfect celebration of our enduring love. I'm Preston Gates, 44 years old, and I built my luxury real estate empire from nothing. Started with a single foreclosed property in Queens when I was 25, worked 18-hour days for 2 decades, and now I own some of the most exclusive buildings in Manhattan. My success afforded Helena everything she'd ever wanted: designer clothes, exotic vacations, a penthouse that could house a small village, and unlimited access to my credit cards. Preston, darling, have you seen my Hermes clutch? The burgundy one? Helena's voice drifted from our bedroom, carrying that particular tone she used when addressing the help, which, apparently, included her husband. I walked toward our bedroom, passing the dining room where florists would soon arrange $2,000 worth of white roses. Helena stood before her walk-in closet, a room larger than my first apartment, wearing a silk robe that cost more than most people's monthly rent. At 42, she was still stunning. Blonde hair that required weekly maintenance at the city's most expensive salon, a figure maintained by a personal trainer who charged more per hour than most lawyers, and skin that glowed from monthly spa treatments in Switzerland. "Which Dubai trip is this one for?" I asked, nodding toward the 3 suitcases open on our bed. She didn't look at me. "It's a design research expedition. I've told you this already. The Burj Al Arab has commissioned several American designers to study their luxury aesthetic. It's a tremendous opportunity for my portfolio." Helena's interior design business, funded entirely by my real estate profits, specialized in what she called experiential luxury. Her clients were wealthy enough to pay her 6-figure fees to make their homes look like 5-star hotels. The irony wasn't lost on me that she spent more time in actual 5-star hotels than working on any designs. "And this research requires how many friends exactly?" I glanced at her phone, which had been buzzing constantly with messages from her social circle, a collection of Manhattan socialites whose primary occupation seemed to be spending their husbands' money in increasingly creative ways. 3 colleagues are joining me. We're studying different aspects of Middle Eastern luxury design principles. She finally turned to face me, her green eyes cold and distant. "I assumed you'd be too busy with your buildings to miss me for a few days." There it was, the dismissive tone that had become her default setting over the past year. My buildings weren't just real estate investments. They were architectural marvels that housed some of the most influential people in New York. But to Helena, my work was simply the machine that funded her lifestyle. "What about our anniversary celebration?" I held up the catering invoice. "We have 60 people confirmed for Saturday night." Helena shrugged, returning to her packing. "Postpone it, or cancel it. I'm sure your assistant can handle the details." 20 years of marriage, and she wanted to cancel our anniversary celebration for a research trip to Dubai. I watched her fold designer dresses into her luggage, clothes I'd purchased for a trip I'd fund to celebrate a career I'd built for her. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning. First class, of course. I can't arrive looking tired for such an important business opportunity." First class to Dubai. Round trip. That was easily $8,000 per person, for her and 3 friends. My mental calculator, finely tuned from decades of real estate negotiations, automatically computed the cost. $32,000 in airfare alone, plus luxury accommodations, dining, and whatever research materials Helena would undoubtedly purchase. I left her to her packing and walked to my home office. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Central Park, but I wasn't admiring the scenery. I was thinking about the pattern I'd been ignoring for months. Helena's business trips had become increasingly frequent and expensive. Her credit card statements read like a tour guide to the world's most exclusive destinations: Paris, Milan, Tokyo, Monaco, always first class, always 5-star hotels, always with her colleagues. But her design portfolio hadn't expanded significantly, and her client base remained relatively small. My assistant, Tara, knocked on the office door. At 34, she was sharp, efficient, and had worked for me for 8 years. She knew my business better than most partners and had an uncanny ability to spot problems before they became disasters. "The anniversary caterers called," she said, setting a stack of contracts on my desk. "They need final headcount confirmation by tomorrow morning." "Cancel it." Tara's eyebrows shot up. "Cancel the entire event?" "Helena's going to Dubai for business. Apparently, studying hotel design is more important than celebrating 20 years of marriage." Tara sat down across from my desk. We'd worked together long enough that she could read my moods, and she could obviously see the frustration I was trying to hide. "Preston, can I ask you something personal?" I nodded. "When was the last time Helena showed any interest in your work, or asked about your day, or seemed genuinely happy to see you?" The question hit harder than I expected because I couldn't immediately answer it. Helena and I had become roommates who shared an expensive address. We attended social functions together, maintained the appearance of a successful couple, and she spent my money with remarkable creativity. But when had we last had a real conversation? When had she last asked about my latest project or celebrated a successful deal? "She's my wife, Tara." "I know, and I'm not trying to overstep. But I've watched you build an empire over the past 8 years, and I've watched her become more distant and demanding. You deserve better than someone who treats you like a walking credit card." That evening, Helena emerged from our bedroom dressed for dinner with her friends, a final celebration before their Dubai adventure. She wore a black dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary and jewelry I'd given her for previous anniversaries. "Don't wait up," she said, barely glancing in my direction. "We'll be celebrating late." She left without a kiss, a hug, or even a genuine goodbye. I spent the evening in my office, canceling anniversary plans and wondering when my marriage had become a business arrangement, where I provided funding and she provided— what exactly? The next morning, I woke to find a note on Helena's pillow. "Flight leaves at 10 a.m. Dubai for 5 days. Don't miss me too much. H. Not, I love you. Not, I'll miss you. Just, don't miss me too much," as if my feelings were an inconvenience she'd rather not consider. I called Tara and asked her to handle the anniversary cancellations. Most vendors were understanding, and I recovered about 60% of the deposits. The florists, caterers, and musicians all expressed sympathy for the emergency postponement. But as I hung up from the final cancellation call, Helena's phone, her personal phone, not the business line, buzzed with a text message she'd left on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a preview. "Can't wait to have you all to myself in Dubai. This is going to be our best trip yet. D. Not one of her female colleagues, not a business contact. D." I stared at the message until the screen went dark, my mind processing what I'd just read. Helena wasn't going to Dubai for business research. She was going for someone named D, and it was going to be their best trip yet, which implied previous trips together. 20 years of marriage, and my wife was having an affair. I sat in my office for 3 hours after finding that text message, staring out at Central Park and trying to process the reality of my situation. 20 years of marriage, 2 decades of building a life together, or so I'd thought. But Helena had been building something entirely different, a secret life funded by my success. The rational part of my mind, the part that had negotiated million-dollar real estate deals and built a business empire, knew I needed more information before making any decisions. The emotional part wanted to throw her belongings off our 20th floor balcony and change the locks immediately. I chose rationality, but just barely. Tara knocked on my office door around noon. The anniversary vendors have all been notified. We recovered $31,000 in deposits. The rest was non-refundable, but honestly, considering the circumstances— What circumstances? She hesitated. Preston, I've been your assistant for 8 years. I've booked Helena's travel, processed her credit card statements, and handled her business expenses. Her design research trips don't match up with any actual business activity. Meaning? Meaning she's spent over $200,000 in the past year on travel and entertainment, but her design business has generated less than $50,000 in actual revenue. The math doesn't work for legitimate business expenses. $200,000. I'd known Helena was expensive, but I hadn't been tracking her spending that closely. My real estate business generated enough income that her expenditures seemed manageable, even if they were extravagant. Show me the details. Tara pulled out a folder she'd apparently prepared in advance. Paris in March, $15,000 for a week-long trip with 3 companions. Milan in May, $12,000 for 4 days. Monaco in July, $18,000 for a long weekend. And now Dubai, estimated cost based on her previous patterns, around $25,000 for 5 days. Who are these companions? That's where it gets interesting. The travel bookings show different names for different trips, but there's one constant. She handed me a printout. Dylan Matthews, personal trainer, 27 years old, Instagram influencer with about 50,000 followers. He's been on every single trip. Dylan Matthews. D. I stared at his Instagram profile on Tara's phone. Shirtless photos, workout videos, inspirational quotes about living your best life. He was young, muscular, and exactly the kind of man who would appeal to a woman going through whatever Helena was going through. How long has this been going on? Based on the travel records, at least 8 months, maybe longer. 8 months. While I'd been working to expand our real estate portfolio, attending business dinners, and planning our anniversary celebration, Helena had been jet-setting around the world with a personal trainer half her age. There's more, Tara continued. I have a contact at the Burj Al Arab. There is no design research project. No American designers were commissioned for anything. Helena's entire story about the Dubai trip is fabricated. The betrayal hit me in waves. First, the affair itself. Then, the realization that she'd been lying for months. Finally, the understanding that she'd been using my money to fund her deception while treating me like an inconvenience in her life. I called my lawyer. Julian Reeves had handled my business contracts for over a decade. He was sharp, ruthless when necessary, and understood the complexities of high-net-worth divorces. His office was in Midtown, and he agreed to see me immediately. Preston, I'm sorry you're going through this, Julian said after I'd explained the situation. But I have to ask, are you certain you want to proceed with divorce papers? Sometimes these situations can be resolved through counseling or— She's in Dubai with her lover, using my credit cards to fund their romantic getaway after canceling our 20th anniversary celebration. I'm certain. Julian nodded. Then we need to move quickly. New York is an equitable distribution state, which means marital assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally. Given that your real estate business predates the marriage and you've been the sole income provider, we can protect most of your assets. What about her spending? Can we recover any of that? Potentially. If we can prove lifestyle dissipation, that she wasted marital assets on her affair, the court might order reimbursement. But we need documentation. I handed him Tara's folder. Will this work? Julian reviewed the travel records, credit card statements, and timeline of Helena's trips. His expression grew more satisfied with each page. This is excellent documentation. We can definitely pursue a lifestyle dissipation claim. The court doesn't look favorably on spouses who use marital funds to finance extramarital relationships. How quickly can we move? I can have divorce papers drafted and ready to serve within 48 hours. When does she return from Dubai? I checked Helena's itinerary. Friday evening, she's flying into JFK at 7:30 p.m. Julian smiled grimly. Perfect. We'll have someone waiting at the airport. That evening, I sat in our penthouse, surrounded by the remnants of our life together. Wedding photos, vacation pictures, expensive artwork Helena had selected. Everything looked the same, but it all felt different now. These weren't memories of a happy marriage. They were evidence of an elaborate deception. Helena's phone buzzed again with another message from Dylan. First class is amazing. Thank you for making this happen. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Thank you for making this happen. He was thanking Helena, but ultimately, he was thanking me. I was funding my wife's affair, paying for her lover's first-class travel and luxury accommodations. I made a decision that would change everything. I called my credit card companies and reported my primary cards as stolen. All of them. The cards Helena had been using to fund her lifestyle, including the one she'd used to book the Dubai trip. Yes, I need to report fraudulent activity, I told each customer service representative. Someone has been using my cards without authorization for several months. I need all charges blocked immediately. Within 2 hours, every credit card Helena had access to was frozen. Her hotel bill, restaurant charges, shopping expenses, and return flight, all blocked. My phone started ringing around 2 a.m. New York time. Helena, calling from Dubai. I let it go to voicemail. Preston, there's some kind of problem with the credit cards. The hotel says they're all declined. This is obviously a mistake. Call me back immediately. I deleted the message and went to bed. By morning, I had 17 missed calls and 12 increasingly frantic voicemails. The progression was fascinating to listen to. Helena started annoyed, moved through confused and worried, and ended up desperate and panicked. Preston, I don't understand what's happening. None of the cards are working. The hotel is threatening to call security. You need to fix this right now. Preston, this isn't funny anymore. Dylan and I are stranded here. The hotel manager says we owe $14,000 and they won't let us leave until it's paid. Preston, please, I know you're angry about the anniversary party, but this is serious. We need help. I wasn't angry about the anniversary party. I was angry about 8 months of lies, $200,000 in marital funds used to finance an affair, and 20 years of marriage that had apparently meant nothing to her. Tara arrived at my office with updates. The hotel contacted Helena's parents. They wired money to cover the immediate bill, but Helena and Dylan had to change their return flights to economy class. They land at JFK tonight at 7:30 p.m., just as scheduled. Is Julian ready? Process server will be waiting at the gate with divorce papers. Helena Ward-Gates will be officially served the moment she steps off the plane. I spent the day reviewing the divorce filing Julian had prepared. It was comprehensive and brutal. Lifestyle dissipation claims, detailed accounting of Helena's spending, evidence of her affair, and a demand that she reimburse the marital estate for funds used to finance her relationship with Dylan Matthews. She's going to be in serious trouble, Julian had warned me. This filing doesn't just end your marriage, it exposes her behavior in legal detail. If this becomes public, her reputation will be destroyed. I thought about Helena's social circle, her business contacts, and the carefully curated image she'd built as a successful interior designer and devoted wife. All of that would crumble the moment those divorce papers became public record. At 7:30 p.m., I received a text from the process server. Package delivered. An hour later, my phone started ringing. Helena calling from JFK. This time I answered. Preston, what the hell is this? A process server just handed me divorce papers in front of everyone at the airport. There are reporters here. Someone tipped off the press. Hello, Helena. How was Dubai? Don't play games with me. You can't be serious about this divorce nonsense. We can work this out. Can we? Because according to my records, you've spent $200,000 of our money on trips with Dylan Matthews over the past 8 months. That seems like a fairly serious problem to work out. Silence. Then, How did I find out about your affair? Does it matter? The question is, what did you think would happen when I discovered you've been using our marriage as a funding source for your relationship with a personal trainer? Preston, listen to me. It's not what you think. Dylan is just a friend. These trips were for business. Helena, I know there's no design research project in Dubai. I know you've been lying for months. I know you canceled our anniversary celebration to go on a romantic getaway with your boyfriend. What I don't know is why you thought I'd never find out. More silence. Then, quietly, what do you want? I want you out of my penthouse. I want you out of my life. And I want you to start figuring out how you're going to pay back the money you stole from our marriage to finance your affair. The line went silent. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text. I'm coming home. We need to talk. I replied, The locks have been changed. Your belongings will be delivered to your mother's house tomorrow. Then I poured myself a glass of 20-year-old scotch and watched the city lights twinkle below our penthouse windows. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Helena's response to being locked out of our penthouse was predictably dramatic. She arrived at our building at 10 p.m. with Dylan in tow, demanding that security let her up to her home. The doorman, who had worked in our building for 15 years and had received very clear instructions from me earlier that day, politely informed her that she was no longer authorized access. I watched the scene unfold from our 20th floor balcony. Helena gesticulated wildly at the doorman, while Dylan stood awkwardly beside her, still wearing wrinkled clothes from their economy-class flight home. Several neighbors had gathered in the lobby, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Patterson from 18B was recording everything on her phone. My phone rang. Helena, calling from the sidewalk. Preston, this is ridiculous. You can't lock me out of my own home. It's not your home, Helena. It's my penthouse, purchased with my money, titled in my name. You're welcome to find your own accommodations. Where am I supposed to go? I hear Dubai is lovely this time of year. Oh, wait, you just got back from there with Dylan. Through the window, I could see her looking up toward our balcony, probably trying to spot me. Dylan was pacing nearby, clearly uncomfortable with the public spectacle. We need to talk about this like adults, Helena said. Adults don't spend 8 months lying to their spouses while financing affairs with marital funds. Adults don't cancel their anniversary celebrations to go on romantic getaways. Adults don't treat their partners like walking ATMs. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference, though I understand why you might have trouble recognizing it. Helena's voice shifted to the pleading tone she'd perfected over 20 years of marriage. Preston, please. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through our problems. Our problems? Helena, you've been having an affair for 8 months. You've spent $200,000 of our money on your boyfriend. You lied to me repeatedly, canceled our anniversary, and treated me like an inconvenience in your life. These aren't our problems. They're your choices. The next morning, Tara arrived at my office with a stack of newspapers and her laptop open to several gossip websites. You're going to want to see this, she said. The New York Post's page 6 featured a photo of Helena and Dylan at JFK Airport with the headline, Luxury Wife's Dubai Disaster. The article detailed Helena's affair, her stranded situation in Dubai, and the airport divorce paper serving. Someone had leaked the story, complete with details about her spending and lifestyle. Who talked to the press? I asked. Could have been anyone. The process server, airport staff, hotel employees in Dubai, or even someone from Helena's social circle. Once word gets out about something like this, it spreads quickly. The Daily News had picked up the story too. Real estate mogul's wife caught in affair scandal. They'd somehow obtained photos of Helena and Dylan from their previous trips, including romantic shots from Monaco and Milan. My phone had been ringing all morning with calls from reporters, but Tara was screening everything. Helena, however, had left 43 voicemails since the previous evening. Should I listen to them? I asked. I already did. They follow a predictable pattern: anger, denial, bargaining, and desperation. She's currently cycling through all 4 stages repeatedly. Julian called around noon. Preston, we need to discuss strategy. The media attention is significant, and Helena's attorney contacted me this morning. She hired a lawyer already? Margaret Steinberg. She's expensive and aggressive, which suggests Helena's parents are funding her legal defense. Steinberg wants to meet and discuss settlement terms. What kind of settlement? She's proposing Helena keep the penthouse, receive monthly alimony of $50,000, and retain access to your credit cards for reasonable expenses. In exchange, she'll agree to a quiet divorce without admitting to any wrongdoing. I laughed out loud. She wants to keep my penthouse and $50,000 a month after spending our money on her affair? It's an opening position. Steinberg knows it's unreasonable, but she's trying to establish a high starting point for negotiations. What's our counteroffer? Helena gets nothing except what she brought into the marriage, which was essentially nothing. She pays back the $200,000 in lifestyle dissipation, and she covers her own legal fees. We're not negotiating from weakness here, Preston. We have documentation, evidence, and public sympathy. That afternoon, Helena appeared at my office building. Security called to ask if I wanted to see her, and I agreed to meet in the lobby conference room. She looked exhausted, wearing yesterday's clothes and no makeup. Dylan wasn't with her. You look terrible, I said, as she sat down across from me. I haven't slept. I've been staying at my mother's house, and she's been lecturing me non-stop about ruining my marriage. Interesting that she's blaming you instead of me. Helena's eyes flashed with anger. My mother thinks you're handling this poorly, publicly humiliating me instead of working through our problems privately. I didn't make our problems public, Helena. You did that when you decided to have an affair and use our money to finance it. I just stopped enabling your behavior. What do you want from me, Preston? I want honesty, which is something I haven't gotten from you in months. I want accountability for the money you spent on Dylan. And I want you to understand that our marriage is over. Because of one mistake? One mistake? Helena, you've been systematically lying to me for 8 months. You've spent enough money on your affair to buy a house. You canceled our anniversary celebration to go on a romantic trip with another man. This isn't one mistake. It's a pattern of deception and betrayal. She leaned forward, trying to look sincere. I can end things with Dylan. We can start over. I'll go to counseling. I'll change. I'll do whatever you want. What I want is for you to take responsibility for your actions. What I want is for you to acknowledge that you destroyed our marriage, not me. What I want is for you to stop acting like you're the victim in this situation. Helena's facade cracked. Fine. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I spent money on trips with Dylan. But you drove me to it, Preston. You were never home, never paid attention to me, never made me feel appreciated. I was lonely, and Dylan made me feel special. So this is my fault? It's both of our faults. Our marriage was failing long before Dylan came along. I stood up. Our marriage was failing because you stopped participating in it. You stopped caring about anything except spending my money and pursuing your own interests. I worked hard to build a life for us, and you treated it like your personal entertainment fund. Where am I supposed to live, Preston? What am I supposed to do? You're 42 years old with a college degree and a business background. You'll figure it out, just like millions of other divorced women do. You're really going to throw away 20 years of marriage? I'm not throwing it away, Helena. You already did that when you decided Dylan was more important than our relationship. I left her sitting in the conference room and returned to my office. Through the window, I watched her emerge from the building 30 minutes later, walking slowly toward the subway station. For the first time in our relationship, Helena was using public transportation. That evening, Tara knocked on my office door with an update. Helena's been calling everyone in her social circle, trying to get support for her side of the story. It's not going well. Meaning? Meaning her friends aren't as loyal as she expected. 3 of them have already called gossip reporters with additional details about her affair. Apparently, Helena wasn't as discreet as she thought. What kind of details? Photos from previous trips, text messages she showed them, stories about expensive gifts she bought Dylan with your credit cards. Her social circle is turning on her. My phone buzzed with a text from Helena. "Please call me. We need to talk about Dylan." I showed the message to Tara. "What do you think she wants to discuss about Dylan?" Probably that he's not handling the media attention well. His Instagram has been flooded with negative comments, and several of his personal training clients have canceled their contracts. The affair scandal is destroying his influencer career. Good. There's more. Dylan's been trying to distance himself from Helena publicly. He posted a statement on Instagram claiming their relationship was purely professional and that media reports about their affair are exaggerated. I pulled up Dylan's Instagram account. Sure enough, there was a carefully worded statement denying any romantic relationship with Helena and claiming he was simply providing fitness consulting services during their travels together. He's throwing her under the bus, I observed, completely, and Helena's not taking it well. She's been posting increasingly desperate messages on her social media, trying to defend their relationship. I spent the evening reading Helena's social media posts, watching her public meltdown unfold in real time. She'd gone from denying the affair to defending it to attacking Dylan for abandoning her. Her carefully curated image as a successful interior designer and devoted wife was crumbling publicly. My phone rang at midnight. Helena, drunk and sobbing. "Preston, Dylan won't return my calls. He's pretending we were never together. He's making me look like some crazy stalker woman. Maybe because you were paying for everything and he was using you for free vacations." That's not true. He cared about me. We had a real connection. "Helena, he was a personal trainer who let a wealthy married woman pay for luxury trips around the world. What did you think was going to happen when the money stopped flowing? You don't understand. What Dylan and I had was special. What you had was a financial arrangement. You paid, he performed. Now that you can't pay anymore, he's moved on to his next client." The line went quiet except for Helena's crying. "I've lost everything," she whispered. "You made choices, Helena. Actions have consequences. You chose to have an affair, you chose to lie to me, and you chose to spend our money on another man. Everything that's happening now is the result of those choices. What am I going to do? You're going to learn to live with the consequences of your actions, just like everyone else does." I hung up and turned off my phone. Tomorrow, Julian and I would meet with Helena's attorney to discuss final divorce terms. Based on her behavior over the past few days, I suspected she'd be much more reasonable than her initial demands had suggested. Helena was finally beginning to understand that her actions had consequences, and those consequences were going to be expensive. The settlement meeting took place in Julian's conference room on a gray Thursday morning. Helena arrived with her attorney, Margaret Steinberg, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usual designer outfit had been replaced with a simple black dress, and she wore minimal makeup. The confident, entitled woman who had canceled our anniversary for a Dubai trip was gone, replaced by someone who looked genuinely frightened. Margaret Steinberg was everything Julian had described: expensive, aggressive, and clearly frustrated with her client's situation. She spread Helena's financial records across the conference table like a general planning a battle she knew she couldn't win. "My client is prepared to make certain concessions," Steinberg began. but she expects reasonable compensation for 20 years of marriage and her contributions to Mr. Gates's success. Julian responded with a stack of documents 6 inches thick. These are credit card statements, travel records, and receipts documenting Mrs. Gates's lifestyle dissipation over the past 8 months. $214,000 in marital funds used to finance her extramarital relationship. Helena flinched at the number. Even she hadn't realized how much money she'd spent on Dylan. My client's personal relationships are not relevant to property division, Steinberg argued. They are when those relationships were funded with marital assets, Julian replied smoothly. New York courts take a dim view of spouses who waste community property on affairs. We're not just seeking divorce, we're demanding full reimbursement for funds Mrs. Gates stole from the marriage. Stole is a strong word, Steinberg said. What would you call using joint credit cards to pay for your lover's first-class travel and luxury accommodations without your spouse's knowledge? I asked. Helena looked up at me for the first time since entering the room. Preston, please. Can't we discuss this privately? We're past private discussions, Helena. You had 8 months to discuss your unhappiness with our marriage privately. Instead, you chose to discuss it with Dylan in 5-star hotels around the world. Steinberg consulted her notes. Mrs. Gates is prepared to accept a modest settlement. She'll take the penthouse monthly alimony of $25,000, and she'll waive any claims to Mr. Gates's business assets. Julian laughed out loud. Ms. Steinberg, I don't think you understand your client's position. She has no leverage here. She committed adultery, wasted marital assets, and lied repeatedly to her husband. She's lucky we're not pursuing criminal fraud charges. You can't prove fraud, Steinberg said, but her voice lacked conviction. Julian opened another folder. Credit card applications signed by Mrs. Gates claiming to be the primary account holder. Hotel registrations where she claimed to be paying for business expenses. Insurance forms where she listed Dylan Matthews as her business partner. We have documented evidence of multiple instances of fraud. Helena's face went white. I never meant for any of this to happen. What did you mean to happen? I asked. Did you think I'd never find out? Did you think you could spend our money on your boyfriend indefinitely? I thought you didn't care what I did as long as I didn't bother you. You thought I didn't care that my wife was having an affair? You never paid attention to me anymore. You were always working, always focused on your business. I felt invisible in my own marriage. So you decided to become visible by spending my money on a personal trainer? Helena started crying. I was lonely, Preston. Dylan made me feel attractive and wanted. You made me feel like a burden. I made you feel like a burden by working to support the lifestyle you demanded. I made you feel like a burden by paying for your business, your clothes, your trips, your everything. You never talked to me. You never asked about my day or my feelings or my dreams. When was the last time you asked about my day, Helena? When was the last time you showed any interest in my work or my feelings or my dreams? She had no answer. Steinberg tried to regain control of the meeting. Regardless of personal grievances, Mrs. Gates is entitled to marital property division under New York law. Julian slid a document across the table. Mrs. Gates brought no assets into the marriage. The penthouse, the business, the investment accounts, all acquired through Mr. Gates's work. Mrs. Gates's interior design business has generated a net loss over 5 years, funded entirely by Mr. Gates. She's entitled to compensation for her domestic contributions, Steinberg insisted. What domestic contributions? I asked. We have a housekeeper, a cook, and a personal assistant. Helena's primary activity during our marriage was spending money I earned. Helena looked up sharply. I supported your career. I entertained your clients. I maintained our social connections. You attended parties and spent money. That's not supporting my career. That's enjoying the benefits of my success. Julian placed another document on the table. This is our final offer. Mrs. Gates receives $50,000, enough to rent an apartment and start over. She relinquishes all claims to marital property, agrees to pay back the lifestyle dissipation over time, and signs a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from discussing the marriage publicly. $50,000 for 20 years of marriage? Steinberg looked incredulous. $50,000 more than she contributed to the marriage, Julian replied. She's fortunate Mr. Gates is feeling generous. Helena stared at the settlement offer like it was written in a foreign language. I can't live on $50,000. Then you'll need to find employment, I said, like most divorced women do. I haven't worked a real job in 15 years. Then you'll need to learn new skills. Community colleges offer excellent retraining programs. Helena's tears turned to anger. You're destroying my life. I'm ending our marriage, Helena. You destroyed your own life when you chose to have an affair. Steinberg whispered urgently in Helena's ear, probably explaining that $50,000 was better than nothing, which was what she'd get if we pursued the fraud charges. Helena looked around the conference room like a trapped animal. What about Dylan? What's going to happen to him? Dylan isn't my problem, I said. Though I understand his personal training business is struggling since news of your affair became public. Apparently his clients don't appreciate trainers who sleep with married women for money. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Helena. You paid for everything, his travel, his meals, his accommodations, his lifestyle. He provided companionship in exchange. That's the definition of a financial arrangement. Helena signed the settlement agreement with shaking hands. 20 years of marriage, reduced to a $50,000 payment and a stack of legal documents. As she prepared to leave, she turned back to me one final time. I hope you're happy, Preston. I hope destroying me was worth it. I didn't destroy you, Helena. I just stopped enabling you. There's a difference. You'll regret this someday. When you're old and alone, you'll remember that you had someone who loved you and you threw it away. Someone who loved me wouldn't have spent 8 months lying to me and cheating on me. Someone who loved me wouldn't have canceled our anniversary to go on vacation with another man. Someone who loved me wouldn't have treated our marriage like a personal ATM. Helena left without another word, followed by her attorney who looked relieved to be finished with such an unwinnable case. Julian and I sat alone in his conference room, surrounded by the paperwork that had formally ended my 20-year marriage. How do you feel? He asked. Relieved, I said, and realized I meant it. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. Any regrets? I thought about Helena's accusation that I'd destroyed her life, about 20 years of shared history, about the woman I'd married who had somehow become someone I didn't recognize. No regrets about the divorce, I said finally. But I do regret not seeing who she really was sooner. I regret enabling her behavior for so long that she thought she could get away with anything. What's next for you? I'm going to focus on my business, spend time with people who actually care about me, and remember what it feels like to be in a relationship with someone who sees me as more than a source of funding. That evening, I returned to my penthouse alone, for the first time since Helena had left for Dubai. The space felt different, larger, quieter, but also more peaceful. I poured myself a glass of wine and stood on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from Tara. How did the meeting go? I replied, It's over. Helena signed the settlement. How do you feel? Free. And for the first time in 20 years, I truly was. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting in my office reviewing quarterly reports when Tara knocked on my door with an unusual expression on her face. You need to see this, she said, setting her laptop on my desk. The screen showed a local news website with the headline, Former socialite Helena Ward arrested for credit card fraud. Below was a photo of Helena being led away in handcuffs from what appeared to be a high-end boutique in Soho. I read the article twice. Helena had been caught using fake credit cards to purchase designer clothing and jewelry. The fraud investigation had revealed a pattern of identity theft and financial crimes dating back several months. Apparently, Her $50,000 settlement hadn't lasted as long as she'd hoped. "There's more," Tara said, scrolling down to additional articles. Dylan Matthews was arrested last week for running an illegal personal training scheme. He was charging clients for services he never provided and using fake credentials to get hired at exclusive gyms. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. Helena and Dylan, the couple who had destroyed my marriage, were both facing criminal charges for financial fraud. "I almost feel sorry for her," I said. "Almost?" "She made her choices, Tara. I gave her a chance to start over with $50,000 and a clean slate. She chose to continue the same pattern of lies and financial manipulation that destroyed our marriage." My phone rang. The caller ID showed Helena's mother, Patricia Ward. "Mrs. Ward," I answered. "Preston, I'm calling about Helena. She's in serious trouble and she needs help." "I'm aware of her arrest. I'm sorry this happened, but Helena's legal problems aren't my responsibility. She's asking if you'll help with her bail money. It's only $25,000. I almost laughed. "Mrs. Ward, Helena spent over $200,000 of our money on her affair, lied to me for months, and then got arrested for credit card fraud. Why would you think I'd give her more money?" "Because you were married for 20 years. That has to count for something." It did count for something. It counted for a $50,000 settlement that was far more generous than she deserved. What she did with that money was her choice. She made mistakes, Preston, but she's still the woman you once loved. The woman I once loved wouldn't have betrayed our marriage, stolen from our joint accounts, or gotten arrested for fraud. I don't know who Helena became, but she's not my responsibility anymore. Patricia Ward hung up without saying goodbye. Later that afternoon, Julian called with an update on Helena's legal situation. "The district attorney's office contacted me," he said. "Helena's attorney is trying to negotiate a plea deal, and they want character references from people who knew her before the divorce." "Are they asking me to provide a reference?" "They are, though I told them it was unlikely you'd be willing to help." "You told them correctly. What kind of sentence is she looking at?" "If convicted on all charges, probably 3 to 5 years in prison. The credit card fraud was extensive, over $70,000 in fake charges across multiple retailers." $70,000. Helena had burned through her settlement money and then stolen $70,000 more, all to maintain a lifestyle she could no longer afford. What about Dylan? His case is separate, but similar charges. The personal training fraud was smaller scale, but he also had outstanding warrants for unpaid debts in violation of probation from a previous arrest. Previous arrest? Apparently, Dylan Matthews has a history of financial crimes targeting wealthy women. Helena wasn't his first victim, just his most generous one. I hung up feeling a mixture of vindication and sadness. Vindication because Helena's arrest proved that her behavior during our marriage wasn't an aberration. It was part of a pattern of poor judgment and criminal activity. Sadness because the woman I'd married 20 years ago had somehow become someone capable of credit card fraud and associating with career criminals. That evening, I had dinner with my mother, Evelyn, at her favorite restaurant in the Upper East Side. At 68, she was still sharp, opinionated, and never hesitant to share her thoughts about my personal life. "I saw the news about Helena," she said over appetizers. "I figured you would." "Are you surprised?" I considered the question. Not really. Helena spent our entire marriage living beyond her means and expecting someone else to pay for her choices. When I stopped being that someone, she found other ways to fund her lifestyle. Do you feel guilty about not helping her? Should I feel guilty? That's not what I asked. I thought about Patricia Ward's phone call, about Helena sitting in jail, about the 20 years we'd spent together. "No," I said finally. "I feel sad that she made such destructive choices, but I don't feel guilty about refusing to enable her behavior anymore. I gave her every opportunity to be honest with me, to work on our marriage, to build a real partnership. She chose deception and betrayal instead. Good, my mother said firmly. Helena made her bed, and now she's lying in it. You don't owe her anything. Sometimes I wonder if I could have done something differently. Maybe if I'd paid more attention to her, or spent less time working, or… Preston! My mother's voice was sharp. Helena is a grown woman who made adult choices. You didn't force her to have an affair. You didn't make her lie to you for months. You didn't tell her to commit credit card fraud. She did all of that herself. I know, but nothing. You provided for her, supported her business, gave her a beautiful home and a comfortable life. If that wasn't enough for her, that's her problem, not yours. My mother was right, as usual. I'd spent months questioning my role in the marriage's failure, wondering if I could have prevented Helena's betrayal. But Helena's arrest made it clear that her problems went far deeper than marital dissatisfaction. Over the following weeks, I found myself thinking less about Helena and more about my future. The divorce had been painful, but it had also been liberating. For the first time in years, I could make decisions based on what I wanted rather than what Helena demanded. I started dating again, cautiously at first. Tara had introduced me to her friend Sarah, a museum curator who was intelligent, funny, and refreshingly independent. Sarah had her own career, her own apartment, and her own interests. She didn't need me to fund her lifestyle or validate her existence. It's nice to be with someone who asks about my work, because she's actually interested, I told Tara after my third date with Sarah. As opposed to someone who asks about your work because she wants to know how much money you made that day? Exactly. 3 months later, Helena was sentenced to 4 years in prison for credit card fraud and identity theft. Dylan received 3 years for his various schemes. I felt no satisfaction in their punishment, but I also felt no sympathy. They had both made choices that led to consequences. I was in my office when Julian called with the news about Helena's sentencing. "How do you feel about it?" he asked. "Relieved that it's finally over," I said. Helena's legal problems were the last connection I had to that part of my life. Now I can move forward completely. Any regrets about how things ended? I looked out my office window at the city below, thinking about the question. Helena was in prison, her reputation destroyed, her social circle gone. Dylan was also in prison, his influencer career finished, his personal training business defunct. Their affair, which had seemed so important to them that they'd destroyed my marriage for it, had ultimately destroyed both of their lives. I regret that Helena made such destructive choices, I said finally. I regret that she threw away 20 years of marriage for a relationship with a criminal. I regret that she couldn't find happiness in the life we'd built together, but I don't regret divorcing her, and I don't regret refusing to enable her behavior anymore. That evening, I had dinner with Sarah at a small Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village. She told me about a new exhibition she was curating, and I found myself genuinely interested in her work. When she asked about my latest real estate project, I could tell she was listening because she cared about my answer, not because she was calculating how much money it might generate. "You seem happier lately," Sarah observed over dessert. "I am happier. For the first time in years, I feel like I'm in a relationship with someone who sees me as a person rather than a provider." "Is that how your ex-wife saw you?" "Toward the end, yes. I was useful for funding her lifestyle, but I don't think she was interested in me as an individual." "That must have been lonely." "It was, but I didn't realize how lonely until it was over." Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "Well, I'm interested in you as an individual. Your money is nice, but it's not why I'm here." I believed her, and that made all the difference. 6 months later, I proposed to Sarah on the balcony of my penthouse, the same balcony where I'd watched Helena argue with the doorman about being locked out. Sarah said yes, and we began planning a small, intimate wedding, the kind of celebration where the focus would be on our commitment to each other rather than impressing other people. Helena's betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but ultimately it had freed me to find real happiness with someone who valued me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. 2 years after my divorce from Helena was finalized, I was preparing for my wedding to Sarah when Tara knocked on my office door with a familiar expression. The same look she'd had when she'd shown me the news of Helena's arrest. "You're going to want to see this," she said, setting her laptop on my desk. The screen showed a prison newsletter website with the headline, "Former Manhattan socialite Helena Ward passes in prison fight." Below was a brief article explaining that Helena had been eliminated during an altercation with another inmate over commissary privileges. I stared at the screen, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Helena was gone at 44, having spent the last 2 years of her life in prison for crimes she'd committed trying to maintain a lifestyle she couldn't afford. "Are you okay?" Tara asked. "I'm not sure how I feel," I said honestly. "She destroyed our marriage, betrayed my trust, and chose a path that led to criminal behavior. But I never wanted her to pass." The article says she was fighting over commissary money. Apparently, she owed other inmates for various favors and couldn't pay them back. Even in prison, Helena had been living beyond her means and expecting others to cover her debts. Some patterns never change. My phone rang. Patricia Ward, Helena's mother, calling to inform me of her daughter's passing. "Preston, I thought you should know that Helena passed away yesterday. I'm sorry for your loss, Mrs. Ward. She never got over losing you, you know. Even in prison, she talked about how much she regretted her mistakes and hoped you might forgive her someday." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. Helena had had 2 years in prison to reflect on her choices, but according to the news article, she'd passed fighting over money, the same obsession that had destroyed our marriage. "I hope she found some peace," I said finally. "Will you come to the funeral? It would mean a lot to our family." "I don't think that would be appropriate, Mrs. Ward. Helena and I were divorced, and my presence might be uncomfortable for your family and friends." "There won't be many friends," Patricia said quietly. "Helena's social circle abandoned her after the arrest. It will be a small service." After hanging up, I sat in my office thinking about Helena's life and passing. She'd had everything: a beautiful home, unlimited financial resources, social status, and a husband who'd supported her dreams. But it hadn't been enough. She'd wanted more, always more, and that insatiable desire had ultimately ruined her. Sarah found me there an hour later, staring out the window at Central Park. "Tara told me about Helena," she said, sitting beside me. "How are you processing this?" "I keep thinking about choices," I said. "Helena made a series of decisions that led from our penthouse to a prison cell to her passing. Each choice seemed small at the time, but they accumulated into a tragedy. Do you feel guilty?" "I feel sad. Sad that she couldn't find happiness in the life we'd built together. Sad that she chose deception over honesty, theft over work, fantasy over reality. But I don't feel guilty about divorcing her or refusing to enable her behavior. Good, because none of this was your fault." Sarah was right. Helena's passing was the final consequence of choices she'd made over many years. I hadn't caused her affair, her lies, her criminal behavior, or her passing. I'd simply refused to continue funding her destructive lifestyle. The next week, I married Sarah in a small ceremony attended by close friends and family. We exchanged vows on the same balcony where I'd once watched Helena's public meltdown, but the space felt completely different now, filled with love and hope rather than betrayal and anger. During our reception, my mother pulled me aside. "You look happy," she observed. "I am happy. Sarah and I have built something real together, based on mutual respect and genuine affection. That's what marriage should be. Not a business arrangement where one person provides money and the other provides—" What did Helena provide exactly? I'm not sure she ever figured that out. Well, Sarah knows what she brings to your relationship, and it's not your bank account. My mother was right. Sarah contributed her intelligence, her humor, her career success, her emotional support, and her genuine interest in building a life together. She didn't need me to fund her existence. She chose to share her life with me because she enjoyed my company. As Sarah and I danced to our wedding song, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. Helena's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been liberating. It had forced me to examine what I really wanted in a partner and to recognize the difference between love and financial dependence. "What are you thinking about?" Sarah asked as we swayed to the music. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am to have found someone who loves me for who I am rather than what I can provide." "Well, you are pretty lovable," she said with a smile. "The money doesn't hurt, but it's not why I'm here." "I know. That's what makes this real." Later that evening, as Sarah and I stood on our balcony looking out over the city lights, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed. 2 years ago, I'd been trapped in a marriage with someone who saw me as a walking credit card. Today, I was married to someone who saw me as a partner, a friend, and an individual worth knowing. Helena's passing had closed the final chapter on that part of my life. Her choices had led to consequences she probably never imagined when she'd first decided to have an affair with Dylan. But those consequences weren't my responsibility. They were the natural result of years of deception, entitlement, and criminal behavior. I'd given Helena every opportunity to be honest with me, to work on our marriage, to build something real together. She'd chosen lies, betrayal, and theft instead. Her passing was tragic, but it was also the final consequence of a pattern of destructive choices that had started long before I'd discovered her affair. "Any regrets?" Sarah asked, as if reading my thoughts. "About Helena?" "No. I regret that she made such destructive choices, but I don't regret refusing to enable her anymore. If I'd continued funding her lifestyle, she might still be alive, but she'd still be the same person who was capable of betrayal and theft. And you'd still be miserable." Exactly. Helena's problems went far deeper than our marriage. I couldn't have fixed her, and trying to do so would have destroyed both of us. Sarah squeezed my hand. "Well, I'm grateful for your divorce. If Helena hadn't shown her true colors, you might never have been free to find real happiness." She was right. Helena's betrayal had been the catalyst that freed me from a relationship that had stopped being a marriage years earlier. Her passing was sad, but it was also a reminder that actions have consequences, and some consequences are irreversible. As we prepared for bed in our penthouse, the same space where Helena had once lived, but which now felt completely transformed by Sarah's presence, I realized that I'd finally found what I'd been looking for in a relationship: genuine partnership with someone who valued me as a person rather than a provider. Helena's story had ended in tragedy, but mine was just beginning. I'd learned the difference between love and financial dependence, between partnership and enablement, between marriage and business arrangement, and for the first time in 20 years, I was truly happy.